We've all had a meltdown before, right? Welcome to Beyond the Screen, I'm Nate, and these are 10 celebrity interviews that ended in a meltdown. Number 10, Mike Tyson. So I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to this man. He is someone who seems to just bounce back after every single heinous thing he's done. So we're gonna run through a few of them. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the 80s, and it wasn't even something he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs. When the topic of Mike's behavior came up, she said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper. Recent reports had also surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with Robin, something she seemingly confirmed, while Mike just stared at the interviewer the entire time, giving him an evil look. Now that was one of the first little notches on his belt. That wasn't really a meltdown. As the years went by, more and more controversies came to light, and during a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career in jeopardy, but he finally drove that nail into the coffin on CP24's Breakfast Television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from "So, what's the show about?" to "So, should you even be allowed on stage, you monster?" That's not what he actually said, but apparently that's what Mike Tyson heard, because he stopped answering questions and would instead hurl sarcastic insults. The F word is once again his favorite and just throws it at him. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since then, and probably for a good reason. Number 9, Paula Abdul. Q13 Fox News. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound like a little bit of a fool. During an interview with Q13, things started out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of their own. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original issues. The interviewers were trying to ask her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claims that the worst singers that he has ever encountered dwell. Instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. It's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was actually just the way that she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula is noticeably woozy. Simon Cowell has actually claimed the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see if she would bring in the American Idol viewers, and when that didn't pan out, he realized the right move to make was to let her go because she's not great on television. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only making that meltdown bigger and bigger. Number 8, Robert Downey Jr. Being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe means a ton of interviews. Now, Robert had the fortune of playing Iron Man for 10 years, being featured in 11 movies. While doing press for his second round with the Avengers in 2015, he had the misfortune of speaking with a legendarily terrible interviewer, Krishnan Guru Murphy, on Channel 4. Now, I've talked about this guy in other videos for making Quentin Tarantino walk out of an interview, and he is making a return for something pretty similar. The interview is uncomfortable from the very beginning. Krishnan stumbles through his questions as quickly as he can, with Robert doing his best just to keep things smooth. Instead of asking questions about the movie though, Krishnan decided to probe Robert about his life in prison and with substance control issues. Now, at first, he's okay and answers the questions, but then Krishnan brings up his dad and asks if he feels that he escaped his dark past. Robert is visibly anxious and begins breathing pretty heavy to keep himself calm. He asks what they were doing there, and then the team said goodbye. He stood up and walked out of the room, and he said that Krishnan seemed nice, but things were getting just a little bit too Diane Sawyer for his taste. This was one of the most uncomfortable interview moments in Robert's career, and it's not even close to the worst one for Krishnan. Number 7, Sophia Vergara. Fans of the show Modern Family will recognize Sophia as Gloria, aka Manny's mom, who is just absolutely hilarious and heartwarming at the same time, even outside of Modern Family. Now, while speaking with Ellen in 2017 about her career and some new projects coming up, Ellen decided to play a game called English Word of the Day. Claiming to be learning Spanish with one word a day, she wished to teach Sophia one as well. Before the segment, Sophia is roasting Ellen for her dislike of cotton, but when Ellen asks if she wants to learn the English word with her, Sophia scoffs and is visibly annoyed, claiming that she speaks English very well. Ellen gives her the word flabbergasted and asks her to define what it means. Not only does she pronounce it correctly the first time, but she knew exactly what it meant. Ellen follows it up with discombobulated, which left Sophia confused and thinking pretty hard. Now, she butchered the word, and while she seemed to be taking things in stride, it turns out Sophia was so frustrated with participating in this game, as she is a bit self-conscious when it comes to her accent. A lot of people consider the segment to be a little bit racist and more cringe-inducing than fun. I've seen the clip. That's accurate. Number 6, Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to your craft, and Joaquin Phoenix is just a prime example. This dude's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his teens. Now, while he is seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was a little tarnished thanks to a freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the shoot when Jimmy plays a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping a few F-bombs and storming off this set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was frozen in shock and clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He is not having a good time. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who teased Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, if you're watching the clip and during the outbursts, you can actually hear him say, "You want to call me Cher? How is that an insult?" He then explained that there is a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space, like the apartment from the scene that they were filming. He apologized to the audience for having to see him behave like that, which, was met with applause. Because at the end of the day, he's a performer and no harm came from the outburst or the meltdown, and honestly, if Larry's cool with it, so are we. Number 5, Nic Cage. The most unhinged man in Hollywood history. One of the few people who somehow managed to star in billions of movies, but has barely seen or kept a cent of that money. During a press junket in 1990, Nick went on a talk show called Wogan to discuss his latest project, Wild at Heart. When the host Terry Wogan announced Nic Cage, he entered with karate kicks, a front flip, somersault. He threw wads of cash at the audience because, hey, he's Nic Cage, why not? And when he finally sat down, moments before the interview actually began, he asked if he could take his jacket off. He proceeds to take his jacket off and the shirt underneath of it, because if people thought Nic Cage was all together, they were proven wrong during this interview. Despite the content being relatively tamed, the entire time you can just see sweat glistening off of Nick's chest, because guess what? Wearing a leather jacket on your bare chest is beyond uncomfortable, especially when there are lights aimed at you. Now sure, it might look cool until you take it off and you just have a heat rash. Nick's always been unhinged, but this meltdown during this interview was truly unique. His behavior in the 90s was apparent and well documented thanks to him literally being in like 2 movies a year. Number 4, Christian Bale. Christian is a very versatile actor, physically and of course skill-wise. He's able to shrink and grow his physique seemingly at will. He's played everything from a skinny substance addict to Batman in 2008. Christian starred in the 3rd film of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Salvation, and while he was filming a scene, director of photography Shane Holbert apparently just moved into Christian's eyesight, and this caused Christian to snap out of character and into defense mode. The now infamous audio clip of Christian screaming at Shane to make matters worse, anyone trying to calm Christian down were met with an equally swift verbal lashing. While the cinematographer was just checking a light to make sure that it was in the right place, like doing his job, Bale made it his mission to share his intense feelings with the entire crew. When the audio leaked, Bale apologized for his actions and told the world to praise the crew for their work. Now, while the movie turned out okay visually speaking, the project as a whole is remembered as a terrible Terminator movie, and he gets pretty uncomfortable when he talks about it on stage. Number 3, Paris Hilton. Paris is the originator of the phrase famous for being famous, because this woman made headlines many times over the years for a little bit of everything. In 2011, Paris appeared on ABC to discuss her career, her personal life, and the recent situations she had been dealing with involving stalkers. During the interview, she revealed a few things about her life that had previously been speculated, like the fact that she used a higher-pitched baby voice on the show Simple Life, but had a much deeper and serious tone in real life. But the conversation eventually ventures into uncharted waters. The interviewer asked Paris if she felt that her former friend and protege, Kim Kardashian, had overshadowed her in the eyes of the media. Paris says, nothing, looks to her publicist, and goes to stand up. They almost wrapped the interview entirely, but eventually things simmered down and they were able to clear up the air. However, the moment stuck with fans of Hilton immediately and begged the question, why is she so uncomfortable talking about this? And it's because it's true. Well, it turns out the world answered the question for her because Kim Kardashian's show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, made it big, and Paris Hilton's show was canceled after one season. So, there you go. Number 2, Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible person who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry, and somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know, Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry, like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist, who knows. The interview came at the height of Tom's pretty public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruise was asked about his previous criticisms of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. I looked up the definition of that word and it means fluent and voluble, but insincere and shallow. What? This was only one of the several interviews from 2005 that I wanted to discuss today, especially with Tom Cruise. Good lord, that was a rough year for him. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a nutcase. Just ask Oprah. I mean, ever since the mid-2000s, his career has mainly been Mission Impossible, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there, not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, my favorite entry, Bobcat Goldthwait. Allow me to start the entry by doing an impression of Bobcat. Thank you. Bobcat may not be much of an actor these days, but in the 80s and 90s, this man was dominating the film and comedy scene. His zany brand of over-the-top, high-energy performance was so well received by any and all who saw him. I can still hear his voice echoing in my head whenever I think of Police Academy. In 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall invited his longtime buddy Bobcat onto his talk show, which unfortunately was in its final days on the air. When he heard the cancellation, Bobcat decided to send a message to the big brains that made the decision, because he spray painted the word Paramount on the wall behind him, throws furniture around, breaks TV screens, all the while Arsenio is just sitting back and laughing. When they returned from commercial, the set was in ruins, and despite that, Arsenio joked that he was like, the worst part is I have to pretend like I'm mad at him. Joke's on him, that wasn't the only talk show meltdown he partook in. A few years after this, Bobcat set a chair on fire on the Jay Leno show for no reason, just for fun. Like he was standing there just going, fire! He was fined over $3,000 and made to replace the chair. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, he hasn't been asked to be on any talk shows recently. Those are some people who had some meltdowns after their interviews. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below and follow the channel for more celebrity content every day. Thank you for stopping, and we'll see you next time.